Hello again, YouTubers, on with SpongeBob 101, back here again on the SpongeBob channel. Today is November 28th, 2020, and you know what that day is, if you don't know. It's our 10th anniversary here on YouTube, right? So thank you guys so much for watching the videos and subscribing and liking and commenting and all that. Alright, so 10 years, really cool, and what better way to celebrate than to review the latest SpongeBob movie, right? It's the biggest SpongeBob related thing out there right now. So it has been quite a while since the release of the movie, first in Canada in August, and then internationally via Netflix on November 6th, or so earlier this month. But still, I was kind of busy, so now we're doing the video, so better late than never. I'll be discussing the plot, animation, character dynamics, music, and overall execution, then giving a score for each of those 5 categories at where I end off the category, right? So first up, the plot. If you haven't watched the movie yet, it is time you get spoiled. I mean, if you do not want to get spoiled, then just click away. But still, if you do, that's a great thing. I like getting spoiled personally. Okay, so if you live in the US, it's still not out. It's supposed to release in 2021, but you can watch it online or use a VPN, okay? The plot centers around SpongeBob's pet snail, Gary. And it starts out with a great introduction by a rather weird-sounding narrator. SpongeBob wakes up and spends time with Gary. He then heads to work, where Sandy introduces her new robot invention to Mr. Krabs. That robot is named Otto, and that robot is a recurring character in this movie. Alright, so eventually Otto tries to fire Krabs, and in return, Mr. Krabs gives Otto the boot all the way into the chum bucket dumpster. Plankton, meanwhile, is planning to execute another plan to steal the secret formula. I mean, what do you expect, right? And Karen actually suggests that his plans have always been foiled by SpongeBob, not Krabs, but Plankton is still insistent that Krabs is the issue and must be removed somehow. Alright, so once the Krusty Krab closes for the night, Plankton springs into action. One very funny running gag that I observed was that Plankton's inventions are coin operated. So we had the telescope, and then now we have his lifting mechanism. It's kind of weird, right? I mean, why would he build inventions that are coin operated? It's really, really weird. Okay, Plankton does obtain the formula, but SpongeBob shows up looking for his keys, and that causes Plankton to lose his printout of the secret formula into out to the fryers. It is then that Plankton decides to get rid of SpongeBob, right? So he realizes that Karen was actually correct. At the same time, Poseidon, the king of the sea in Atlantic City, right? He is introduced as a weirdo king of the sea who uses snail slime for skin moisturizer. He runs out of snails and gets his chancellor to put out a decree for his snail, which Plankton stumbles upon and kidnaps Gary for the said purpose. And SpongeBob realizes that Gary has been snail napped. That's a new term, by the way. along with Patrick, get in the boat with Otto and are sent off by Plankton to presumably never come back. Along the way, they quarrel, and then they get back together, and then somehow they end up in a desert on land, and they have to lift a curse in some random abandoned Old West ghost town called Goner Gulch. So this is probably the first portion of the movie that I was just... this was the first portion of the movie that I was kind of puzzled what it was doing there, right? Like, it was super random. SpongeBob and Patrick meet Sage, which is pretty cool, and he gives them the challenge coin for courage. After freeing the folks from the curse, they continue to Atlantic City, where despite being told not to get distracted, they get distracted, right? So eventually their first attempt of snatching Gary from the king lands them not only in jail, but on death row. So meanwhile, Krabs, Squidward, Sandy, and even Plankton discover the fate of SpongeBob and Patrick, and they proceed to use the all-new upgraded Patty Mobile to head to Atlantic City to save SpongeBob and Patrick. So it's funny how in the first SpongeBob movie, SpongeBob and Patrick were the ones to save everyone else. Remember, that was where Plankton turned Bikini Bottom into Planktopolis, right? And now it is kind of the opposite, although not on such a grave scale as it was in the first movie. After more quarrels, SpongeBob and Patrick are eventually put on trial in a show watched by Poseidon. That was weird, which does get disrupted by the rest of the gang who, show up and like flip the lights and they capture Lamont and the Chancellor. Yeah, they tie him up, and then they make the case that SpongeBob doesn't deserve to die because all of his done and the person that he is, right? So they break out in song, which by the way was really impressive. I think it's probably one of my favorite or top 5 favorite moments in the show. That song, I think, probably the second favorite. I'll touch on my favorite later in the music section. But anyways, they manage to swipe Gary and then sort of escape, but then they get chased and then they get surrounded after Otto hilariously actually decides to leave them in the dust by saying, "You're fired," and driving off. So yeah, they get surrounded. But eventually, SpongeBob manages to muster up the courage to stand up to Poseidon and explain that he couldn't bear to part with Gary for anything in the world, and he offers to be Poseidon's friend, right? And encourages Poseidon to let his hair down, literally, and be a strong and respectable ruler of the seas. So eventually, there's a lot of feel-good moments, and then Poseidon just lets them go free and acknowledges SpongeBob's courage, and yeah, that's kind of how the whole ordeal ends. And the movie ends with Bikini Bottom turning into a snail refuge, with the denizens of the town adopting the snails that were released from Poseidon's captivity. And there's also a quick tribute to Stephen Hillenburg, who passed away on November 26th, 2018, so just slightly more than 2 years before this video is being made. Alright, so yeah, this kind of discussed this plotline multiple times in the SpongeBob Movie 3 book reviews that I've done over the past months, and you can find them all in our SpongeBob Movie 3 playlist, which is in the description box below. So even after watching this movie, my thoughts on the plot are generally the same. The whole idea of Gary going missing seems like a ripoff on the season 4 episode Have You Seen the Snail? Now, I do acknowledge that in that episode, Gary voluntarily runs away from SpongeBob, and the dynamic here is obviously different because SpongeBob clearly showers Gary with lots of love, but it is Plankton who snail naps Gary, and then SpongeBob and Patrick have to go rescue him. But still, the general idea is that Gary is missing, so gotta get Gary back, right? The writers also clearly tried to fit in the development of SpongeBob's courage in the short time span of this movie, and I felt that it was not executed in the best way possible, which is kind of disappointing. Sage was cool, so the guy gives SpongeBob and Patrick a challenge coin, is like, their guide through their quest and all that. But the test for SpongeBob to learn courage was super random. They encounter that zombie cowboy pirate, or is it pirate or cowboy pirate zombie, El Diablo, right, on land, which is really random. Did they really have to just put that in there for some reason? I'm not sure why they had to do that. It would have been cooler if the quest to build up courage was actually combined with the physical trip from Bikini Bottom to Atlantic City. That would have been a nice throwback to SpongeBob and Patrick's journey to Shell City, and their development of manliness. Remember, like the Now That We're Men song from the first movie was one of the most iconic songs generally for SpongeBob. So it's kind of weird that he didn't try to follow on that track. And also the fact that SpongeBob and Patrick were completely distracted by gambling and partying in Atlantic City doesn't really sit well with me. SpongeBob is technically a show aimed at kids. I'm not a kid, but I still enjoy it. But still, it's technically aimed at kids. So, yeah, that is that. But it is clear that the writers did a good job tying the place Atlantic City, which is kind of like Las Vegas or Macau or something like that, with the quest overall. So that is that. Generally not a fan of that idea of the whole Atlantic City being, well, essentially Las Vegas. But, that is what it is. Also, it's kind of strange how they describe Atlantic City as a lost city. It is really, really strange because that place is flooded with folks, okay? So it doesn't make sense to be a lost city. I don't even know why they decided that it had to be the lost city. Why can't it just be Atlantic City? So, yeah, that's about that. I also really like the fact that he brought back the Pattymobile but gave it a mega upgrade, right? Turning it into a sub, as in a sandwich, like a Subway sandwich, rather than leaving it as what Squidward described as, seriously, that old thing? So, there is no Kerr Patty moment here. Basically what I'm referring to is that part in the first movie where SpongeBob and Patrick just burst out from the basement of the Krusty Krab through the Krusty Krab's window with the Patty Wagon. That was like one of the most epic moments in SpongeBob for me. But anyways, the sub actually just travels under the sand outside the Krusty Krab and then pops up shortly after, and rather than slamming through the walls of the Krusty Krab and costing Krabs a few $1,000s or something like that. And then as for Poseidon, right, so this last point on the plot, Poseidon being a king of the sea who requires snail slime for use as a moisturizer is kind of a rather disgusting concept. He literally rubs the snail, not just the slime, all over his face. I mean, who does that? So it is, it's not as if there were no other sources of moisturizer. I mean, okay, fine, snail slime might be a good source, but really? Snails? I mean, maybe it's the case that snail slime or snails are the only source of moisturizer under the sea, so that's a SpongeBob mystery we'll never find the answer to. Or maybe we will, I'm not sure. So all in all, I'll still give the plot a 6 out of 10. Moving on to animation. So that was the bulk of our video, by the way. Animation, right? So I was initially not super excited about the CGI graphics, but I gotta say, I've more or less warmed up to it. This movie utilizes the exact same animation style throughout the movie, rather than a mix of 2D and 3D as they did in Sponge Out of Water back in 2015. Of course, with exception to the live action portion, Goner Gulch. I mean, that's just a different thing because it's not animation, so we can't really count that. I do want to acknowledge that the backgrounds were very, very detailed. And one cool thing that I noticed is that the flower clouds in certain scenes have this, well, I'm not really sure how to describe it. It's like a smudge or something like that. It looks as if the clouds themselves were paintbrushes, right? So, the paintbrush brushing across a canvas. And that was really, really cool. Really like that little effect there. And also, like, other things like roads in this movie are not clearly demarcated from the sand as they usually are in, well, the animated series. And buildings are also very well detailed and overall very nice. So given the current style of animation in this movie, do I think they should keep this kind of style for a potential fourth movie? Not saying that there will be, but if they ever do a fourth movie, I think it would be good to just stick with CGI. They kind of proved that CGI does work, so yeah, I think that'd be great. And keeping the 2D for the animated series alone, well, it's fine with me. So overall for this, I'll actually give the animation a 9 out of 10. Next, character dynamics. So I don't have too much to say for this portion. The fact of the matter is that this movie was meant to tie in directly with the Camp Coral spin-off, which features the main characters presumably meeting for the first time at summer camp. But since the Camp Coral has been delayed to 2021, this movie kind of functions like a sneak peek into the first and perhaps most memorable interactions between SpongeBob and everyone else. Since there is a strong friendship theme at the climax, where they burst out in song about the secret formula song, I would say that tie-in was done well and does make sense, but I'm still not a fan of the rewriting of SpongeBob history. The characters themselves behave generally normally as they do in the show. Although in this case I did notice that the writers were trying to create a semblance of recurring conflict between SpongeBob and Patrick. That's not something you usually see in the show. SpongeBob and Patrick don't really fight that much. I mean, they do have their differences, but I mean, it's not really that clear. Like, they try to accommodate, especially SpongeBob. SpongeBob is really accommodating in the show. But anyways, that was pretty interesting. As for Sandy, of course, that's where SpongeBob history is most obviously rewritten, so I don't have to explain that too much. Squidward does demonstrate once again, this is kind of rare, right? Although he finds SpongeBob very annoying, he actually expresses some appreciation or friendliness to SpongeBob and suggests that SpongeBob's intentions, although are annoying, are definitely not negative in nature. Like, SpongeBob doesn't mean any harm to him. SpongeBob is just really annoying to Squidward. So that is that. And I do want to give a special mention to how Plankton was handled. So after Krabs hands over the secret formula and surrenders, Plankton actually realizes that what drives him in life is not necessarily just trying to steal Krabs' formula, but actually triumphing for once in his life after many, many, many failures. And for some reason, it is never shown that Plankton actually returns the formula, or it's also not shown what he does with it. But the fact that he has a change of heart, he shows up at a Krusty Krab volunteering to join the gang and to rescue SpongeBob and Patrick, shows some remorse for the fact that he was the one who created all the trouble by kidnapping Gary in the first place, and thereby resulting in SpongeBob and Patrick being sentenced, to death. So I like that side of Plankton. It's really nice to see. Plankton also played a very big role in the second movie, but in that case, it was more about like friendship, the whole working together in harmony thing. It's not the bad concept, it's just kind of lame. But for now, at least here we do have more character development. And yeah, so again, it shows Plankton is just not an evil one-eyed cephalopod. Not cephalopod, copepod. I keep saying cephalopod, the words are just too similar. Okay, so for character dynamics, 8 out of 10. Music, this is my favorite portion to talk about, because I really like SpongeBob music, but I am split on the music in this movie. On one hand, songs like It's Always Summer in Bikini Bottom that plays, when the movie logo is shown, and Snail, I'm a Veil, which plays in the credits by Weezer, as well as the Gary song Jazz, also in the credits, were absolutely impressive. And those were songs that I re-listened to again and again once I first encountered them in the movie. So it was strange that such awesome songs were kind of relegated to the credits, but better than nothing, right? We also had the Secret to the Formula song. I think that was really impressive. And as I said, so that's number 2 in terms of my favorite songs from this movie. Number 1 is It's Always Summer in Bikini Bottom. I hope there is an extended version, because the one in the movie was like about 1 minute 10 to 15 seconds, which is kind of short. So hopefully, when the music album is released in 2021, there will be a extended version of that, because that song is really nice in my opinion. On the other hand, right, this movie also utilized a lot of existing music, non-SpongeBob music, right, as you can see here. So this is IMDb, right? We have soundtrack credits, so we have It's Always Sunny in Bikini Bottom, we have Slow Ride, so that's kind of external reused music. And there's On the Road Again, Dreamweaver, El Diablo is definitely new. It was not a great song. How We Do, also personally not a great song. The Livin' La Vida Loca is reused. Aka Waka Maka Mia sounds really ridiculous. But Gary's song, produced and performed by Kenny G, absolutely awesome. This, nah. My heart will go on, right? That was so random, but it did fit in the movie. Okay, so that's what it is. But Secret to the Formula, absolutely awesome. Take on Me, also pretty cool. Now this Take on Me was actually, it is an existing song, but I think it fit very well with the ending of the movie. Agua, Krabby Step, both of them I really do not like. But Snail, I'm a Veil, absolutely awesome. So those are the songs. Now, overall, I'll give the music a 7 out of 10. I would have wished to give it like a 10 out of 10, because personally I think music from SpongeBob is one of the best things. But just like some of the songs like Agua and Crabby stuff just were so random. I don't even know how it ties in. The style of the music there is just not, relatable to SpongeBob. So that's my opinion. What do you guys think? Comment in the box below. All right, overall execution. Now, given the global circumstances, it was clear that the movie was going to be delayed. That is understandable, right? However, the movie was suddenly moved to video on demand after multiple delays. And as far as the US goes, as I said before, it is not, pushed back to 2020. It is pushed back to 2021. That is absolutely absurd, and it boggles my mind as to why Viacom decided to release this movie internationally on Netflix, but kept it unreleased in the US, scheduled for a CBS All Access or Paramount Plus launch in 2021. Originally, I thought that this was because they wanted to release this movie alongside Camp Coral. But I mean, the fact that they just released it to the rest of the world without Camp Coral, it's kind of weird. I mean, that means that's not the main point. So yeah. And generally, the multiple delays, as I've said on the channel before, really dampened my hype for the movie. We also didn't get to see a huge push on the merchandise end with just a couple books, Funko Pops, plush toys, Imaginext play sets, and some other miscellaneous items. I mean, there was like Battle for Bikini Bottom Rehydrated. That was a big thing. But still, it's not related to this movie. Should they have made a video game tie-in for this movie? Usually video game tie-ins are not that great, but still, I would have liked something like that. But I guess after, the failure of SpongeBob Hero Pants back in 2015, they just decided, we're not gonna make that investment because why bother? So yeah, that's kind of unfortunate. But anyways, this whole merchandising thing, I don't think it was a 2020 issue because obviously merchandising contracts can be given out way in advance, been done in 2019. And products still can be sold regardless of whether people go to the theater or not. Additionally, it has not been announced if the movie will be released for home video or on other video on demand sites like Amazon and iTunes. So if they keep it as an at least in the US, CBS All Access or Paramount Plus exclusive forever, which I don't think it's super likely, but it's possible. And if that is the case, right, then that will be very disappointing because, personally, I do like collecting SpongeBob, physical SpongeBob DVDs and Blu-rays. So, I mean, I do purchase SpongeBob episodes on iTunes because I have lots of iTunes credit, but I still like getting the physical thing because, it's really nice to look at, right? And I'm pretty sure a lot of you agree with that too. So hopefully Nickelodeon, come on, release this on home video sometime in 2021. Not sure when that's going to happen, but yeah. Overall, I'll give execution a 3 out of 10. Execution, wow. It kind of ties into like the fact that SpongeBob and Patrick were going to get executed. But, I'm not going to speak to that too much. Right. It's partially the fault of the virus that this score is so low. So, I can't be too hard on Viacom by giving them a 0. Right? I was planning on giving them a 0 because they really destroyed the hype for me personally. But yeah, that is what it is. So overall, that is our review of SpongeBob Movie Sponge on the Run. What did you think of the movie? I mean, assuming you've watched it. If you haven't watched it, please go check it out. It's worth the time. And personally, I've watched this like I think 4 times in full already, and a couple times just to listen to the music. So yeah, overall, I think the movie is okay. Overall, I'll give it. I won't average out the scores because the bad parts really outweigh the like have a lot of weightage on it, like especially the plot and the plot and overall execution. Although the music was kind of like the saving grace, like Snail I'm a Veil. If you guys haven't listened to that, go check it out, okay? It's amazing. And the Secret Formula song, I think that was like probably one of the catchiest or most upbeat SpongeBob songs. Coolest SpongeBob songs. I'm not sure how to describe it anymore. It's just a great one. Alright, so yeah, that is our review. Make sure to subscribe, like, favorite, comment, etc. Keep it right here on the SpongeBob channel. Thank you guys so much for watching, and thank you guys so much for supporting the channel for the past 10 years. And there's gonna be many more years of content or more content coming in the years ahead. All right, so it's 25 minutes now, so that's all for this video. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.